Here we go. A piecewise function is given. Use the properties of limits. Okay, but you can read. So, what are we thinking we need to do for this? What's that? Yeah. Well, you could graph it. Stop. Or, for the left-hand limit, which function do we use? Top one, because it says less than, less than. So what does that thing equal when you plug in 0? I'm sorry, 4. I don't know why I said 0. Oh. Trick question this was, wasn't it? We didn't even need the piecewise, did we? I told you those. It's funny. We didn't have a single one of those on our homework, but they threw one in here. I didn't even notice that's what this was when I made this. Well, the piecewise was completely useless. What was the only piece we needed was the 4. Oh, I'm sorry, it says -4, doesn't it? Never mind. All we needed was the top equation, and that was it. The bottom part of the piecewise served absolutely no purpose. So, let's see, we're just finding to see if it's continuous or the limit. Look at this function, x squared minus 5. Does that have any discontinuities in it? So the limit's going to exist. It will. All we have to know is, what's it going to be? Plug in -4, what is that? 16 minus 5 is 11. So we know all three numbers should be 11. So the answer is C, to number 1. Most likely, and I can say this with 95% certainty, the one you will have on your final, should I choose to put it on there, yeah, this will not be irrelevant. These numbers and this number will match, and you'll actually have to plug them into the different piecewise and make sure all the numbers match. So, any questions on this one? Good question. So let me change the question just a tad to answer that question. Let's say, instead of being at -4, these limits, hold on, I'm going to change them. Let's say these limits weren't to -4, they were to 0. 0 from the left, 0 from the right, and just overall 0. Now it's relevant, because now that's where your piecewise splits. So from the left, you would need the top equation, which is -5. From the right, you need the bottom equation, because it's greater than 0. And this one is 4. So the left-hand limit is -5, check. The right-hand limit is 4. Check. What is the overall limit? That's right. These numbers have to match. If they match, that's your overall limit. If they don't, it wouldn't exist. So if it had been 0, the correct answer would have been D. -5, 4 does not exist. But it wasn't. So that answer your question, Ben? Other questions on number 1? All right, marching on. Number 2. Find the exact trig value. Easiest way to do it is probably just find cosine and flip it. Does anybody have a unit circle handy? Anybody? Nobody? Nobody has unit? Yes! Good job, Melissa. Well, you know, I'm going to take it from someone who knows. You probably do know. Cosine, 7 pi over 4. Okay. So secant, you just flip it. Oops, getting ahead of myself. You have to rationalize it. Cancel, cancel, and you are correct. It is radical 2, and the answer would have been B. So if you get a secant, cosecant, or cotangent, just find it on the unit circle, find its reciprocal, so cosine, and then flip it and rationalize. Questions on that one? Somebody'd like to see another example of that. So, again, our steps were find cosine 7 pi over 4, which equaled radical 2 over 2. And then because we're looking for secant, you just flipped it and got to this. Then all we had to do is rationalize it. By multiplying the top and bottom by radical 2, making that 2 radical 2. And that was just 2. Which cancels with the top. Actually, your calculator would probably just tell you that, wouldn't it? That's true. That's true. But you could probably punch in the answers and see which one equaled that. And it worked. Yeah. Just make sure. What would you have to make sure of in this one? Radian mode. It only matters what mode you're in if you're actually using a trig function, which we are. We're going to use cosine. So you need to make sure in radian. So you could have done 1 divided by, yes, I heard somebody say it, cosine 7 pi over 4. Bang. Which, if you punch in all the answers, would be square root of 2. Very good. Other questions on this one? Points? Anything? All right. Number 3, long division. Here we go. Long division. 3x minus 1. That would be 6x cubed. Thing with long division and synthetic division, it definitely helps you to write in all your missing terms so that everything lines up a little better when you're working this. Okay. 6x cubed divided by 3x. 2x squared. Then you multiply that by both things. 6x cubed minus 2x squared minus. When we were doing this in the review out of the book, I was still noticing a lot of people, they would have the minus on this, but they would forget to change the sign of this because this minus kind of distributes to both terms. Please don't forget that. That makes this a positive 2x squared. Gross. How many times does, well, what's 2 divided by 3? 2/3. What's x squared divided by x? X. Probably the easiest way to do that. 2x squared divided by 3x is 2/3 x. Multiply it back through. 2/3 x times -1 is negative 2/3 x. Well, this wasn't a pretty problem, was it? Probably won't be quite this ugly in the final, but I can't promise that. So 2/3 x, drop the 2. What's 3 divided by 2/3? Let's put that backwards. 2/3 divided by 3. 2/9, that's right. Moment of truth. Moment of truth. Alright, y'all can let him know what the stakes are while I grade this. The current average for the class is 75. So we figured, because it's right in the middle of the 70s, you'd have to do amazing to raise it and horrible to lower it. Which I guess kind of makes public what you're going to do.
Well, I know that one, right.
Here we go. Thus far, you have not missed a single problem. Only 2. Not bad. Alright, so punch this in. 90 divided by 120. I'll even round up if your hundredth place is high enough. 0.75, it really made that little difference. But I am still proud of your 8 out of 10. You can keep that because we're going over it right now. People on YouTube are going to be like, what is going on?
I guess over half of it.
If you're watching this at home on YouTube, we took a small break to grade someone's pretest. Back to live action. Okay.
So now can you tell me how to do all this?
That's what we're doing now. But you got the first 2 right, so I'm assuming you don't need to know those. We're on number 3 right now. YouTube. Now, I know you can get on it. Okay. All you missed was the first 2. So number 3, we've gotten down to 2/9. 2/9 times 3 is 2/3, which that's what we were hoping it would be, minus 2/9. All right, so negative 2 plus 2/9 is, let's see, let's do the fractions. 18/9 minus, was it? Touche. I imagine it'd be 16/9, but yes, it is. Okay. 2x squared plus 2/3 x plus 2/9 plus 16/9. So the answer would be B. Was it? Oh, touche. Minus, positive, minus 16/9. The answer would be A.
So what is it? 8, that's 2/13.
Your final. 7, actually.
I thought you said you were gonna
I said if it was high enough, like
I
0.78.
don't know if you round up.
Oh, no.
You learn that, I can grade it. Come on, baby. In my case, come on.
Anyway, 7. Is there any particular step to this problem that was particularly... I know there were fractions. How did we get this? Alright, so we had -2 plus 2/9. So you had to make it a like fraction, so 18/9. So it's -16/9, which I guess you could have without even knowing where this came from. But if you remember, say your remainder was 4, you put the remainder over the original divisor. The divisor. I don't know. I don't use these terms very often. But in this case, so that'd be 16/9 over 3x minus 1, which is the same as putting it in the denominator with it, which is where that came from. Other questions from this problem? Mm-hmm. For every missing term, you don't have to, but I think it's easier. That way everything kind of lines up in its column. You don't have to, but like what probably happened with you is you just lost track of where you were. Yeah. That's the only real reason to do it. It's not like mathematically necessary. But. Questions? Number 4. Matrix operations. Before we do anything else, which of these two rows is actually going to change? Row 2. So we can immediately cross off C and D because they have row 1 changing, which is incorrect. So we know rows 1 and 3 are going to stay the same, so that could be A or B. Yeah, so -4 times row 1 would be -16. I can multiply. +20. Sounds like a candy wrapper, which we obviously can't eat in here. Add that to row 2. That's -20, +20, +1, -6. And the answer is B. It's always the second one. Always the second one. Well, that's why we're doing this. Questions? No? All right. Good. Number 5. No. We're not going to plug it into our calculator. How'd you do this one, Chris?
What I did was I saw that that side A was 8, but that would be good.
What are you talking about? Maybe you should text whoever you're talking to. Maybe they know what we're talking about.
No, it doesn't.
Put it away. Or I'm taking it up.
You see, my next problem is going to be
Everybody's was, but we're just going in numerical order. It's on the board too.
what I did was I multiplied over.
All right. Let's do that. Now I'm looking at this. I'm noticing none of them have the same first row, so that should be enough to do this. So 3A would give you what? -3, -27, -18. 3B would be -18. Of course, if we want to go ahead and multiply by -3, you could, but I won't. 12 and 27, and then this minus this. So this minus -18 is 15, which is enough right there. It's C. It's the only one with a 15 in the proper spot. If there had been an entire row that was the same, I guess A, you could just choose not to do that row. But you could just keep going by doing every single number the exact same way. Very good. Questions? Excellent. Number 6. Rectangular, find the polar. What are we thinking? What do we do? Very good. Make a triangle. And you do that by plotting the point. -4 radical 2, -4 radical 2. Boom. It's over here in the third quadrant. Now, one thing to do if you were a little fuzzy on the trig and all that stuff, you could do process of elimination just by figuring out what quadrant all the answers are going to be in. Luckily, all these radii were positive, which I believe I did on the final too. I didn't want to give you guys any crazy ones. So, 8, 225, 8, 225, that'd be somewhere down here. 8, 135 is up here, so that one's not going to be it. This one's also 225, so it could be it. And this one's 135, which is in the wrong quadrant. So now really all we need to know, since the angles are the same, we don't even need to find the angle. We know it has to be 225. All we need to know is how far our radius is. And like Natalie said, if you make the triangle, you know this piece is 4 radical 2, and this piece is 4 radical 2, because those were the coordinates. And you can do Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. 4 squared is 16. 2 squared is 2. 16 times 2 is 32. It is. So the answer is alpha. Again, I'm pretty sure the one on your final, should I choose to leave it on there, is also in degrees. I don't think I put any of these in radians, and I did not put any negative radii on there. But even if I had, just remember, a negative radius just flips you over the origin, so that'll change what quadrant you're supposed to be in.
How did you say before
You mean from the original point or from C? Oh, just because it was negative x, negative y? That's a rectangular coordinate. So like if it had been like -3, -5, -3, -5. Yeah. When they give you the rectangular, really the biggest, most helpful thing about that is just so you know what quadrant it's in. The only way that these help you is for finding the radius. Well, that's not true. You would need them to find the angle too, I guess, but we didn't even need that here. If you had, you would have found this is 45, which makes our angle 180 plus 45, hence the 225. Questions on that one? Okay. Number 7. Distance. Well, we took a step back into geometry. And I believe this formula is on the board over there. It is. It's that top middle red one. x2 minus x1, y2 minus y1. x2 minus x1 squared, y2 minus y1 squared, all under a square root. So 2 squared, -7 plus 3, so 4 squared, radical 20. And which of these is the same as radical 20? D. Because this is the same as radical 4 times radical 5, and that's 2 radical 5. Distance formula. I don't know. That one stands a good chance of being one of the ones I take off just because it's so elementary. But it still could be on there, so make sure you know that formula. I didn't mean that elementary to be insulting if you missed it. I was just meaning something that's really prior to this class. Never mind. Questions? I realize that was probably insulting, and I apologize. That was not the intention. Other questions on this? Okay. Number 8. It's easy if you have the formula. How about that? Number 8. Evaluate the determinant. What do I do? Wrong. Rewrite the first two. Technically, that's true. And I won't stop you if you want to do it like that. I don't even know how I would stop you. Okay. Evaluate the determinant. So, rewrite the first 2 rows. Now what do I do? That's right. So is that 36? You're going to add all these up. You were right. You were exactly right. Did you get this one right? Wow. That was lucky.
That's how I was on the other 8 rows.
It's impressive. You got 8 out of 10. All right. Now we go in the other direction and add those up. 2, 6, 5. So is it 60? 5, 4, 2, which is 40. 3, 2, 4, 24. Here we go. Ugh. 112, 124, so negative 12. I did something wrong. 68, 50 is 118. Oops, so negative 6. Yes, someone asked yesterday if determinants can be negative. They can. A determinant, the only thing it can't be is 0. I take that back. A determinant can be 0. Does anybody remember what it means if the determinant is 0? What doesn't exist? Obviously the matrix exists. That's right. The inverse wouldn't exist. If the determinant equals 0, there is no inverse for that matrix. Very good. Very good. Questions? All right.
Can I tell you how we went out on the next problem?
I would love for your contribution.
Okay. So, when I saw the dot at 1, 1, I knew the function of 1 had to be 1. So I marked out body 2.
Nice.
And then from there I went E, B, minus.
Not nice.
And B is the function.
So really you could have marked out C, D, and B just by knowing what the value it was. That's right. F of 1 is 1. That's where the point is. And this is the only one with that option. If there had been more than one with that option, you would have needed to find the limit. And the limit, as it approaches 1, approaches the y value of negative 3. So, this time. You might not have one that's like that in the test. Eeny, meeny, miny, moe is usually pretty good though. Did you do it too? What is wrong with you people?
I couldn't figure out how to figure out the so I played eeny, meeny, miny, moe, or the roommate first two, and I was up to 8. And I was like, I haven't had very good.
You know, you're always going to be... You know, if you play eeny, meeny, miny, moe, you'll always be left with A and D. So I guess moral of the story is I should make every answer B or C. And eeny, meeny, miny, moe would never work.
Well, but then the word would be devastating to their right.
As much as I'm enjoying this conversation, once again, the people on YouTube are suffering. We're sorry. We're coming. Number 10.
Can I tell them my theory on number 10 now?
No, you've been hogging the spotlight.
Yeah, I started on it, but then I realized we were on the wrong topic.
Then, nice. Very good. So you didn't do any math at all, did you?
You just stole my thunder.
Very nice. So really, the only way that you would have, by them being clever and using the same angles for every single answer, it actually hurt them because you didn't have to do any math. Well, that's nice. In the scenario, although I'm betting they do that stupid thing on the other problem too, which means I'll probably take it out. But I still tip my hat for your acknowledging that, or for your noticing that. Assuming you could not do that, how would you have solved this if you couldn't have done it quite that easily? Law of cosines, very good. And I'll just do one side. We won't do all three. Start with the smallest. What'd you say? Well, here you go. Here it is. You have to pick an angle to start with first. So let's go for C. So that means cosine C is how this whole thing's going to end, and side C is a little freak over here by himself. So A squared plus B squared minus 2, 8. I don't remember what sides those were. So that's 16 equals 64, 36, 100 minus 96 cosine C. Subtract. Remember, you have to subtract this piece first because the negative 96 is, I think this is where the adultery conversation came in. It's married to cosine via multiplication. The only way to get rid of it is by division. So inverse cosine of that, assuming you were in degree mode, which you should have been, would have given you, what was it, 29 degrees. Then you do the same thing again, or you could do law of sines at that point. Did you get the right thing? Yeah. Very good.